So a lot of you guys have been bugging ever since I announced this matchup, and originally this was supposed to be Tsukushima versus Aizen because I was going to play into the old meme of the Fullbring arc. The old meme was that Tsukushima was Aizen's son, so I was like, hey, let's actually take that meme and make it into a video. It wouldn't be the first time I've done that. I mean, the whole Dragon Ball Z versus Bleach was all spawned from like this meme I saw on Twitter, and I was like, you know what, I actually should do a video on Bleach versus Dragon Ball Z. That'd be pretty interesting. But the reason that meme with like Tsukushima being Aizen's son even came about in the first place was because they're both schemers. They both have a really powerful ability, and I don't really see the last one, but apparently they look very similar, but I don't really see the resemblance between Tsukushima and Aizen, so maybe that's just me, but I don't see it. But after giving it just like 30 seconds worth of thought, I was like, that makes no sense for me to do this when I could just do Ginjo versus Aizen, because one, Ginjo was the one that did the entire scheme in the Fullbring arc. He was the one that thought of the entire plan, up to the detail of even having Tsukushima cut him so that he wouldn't jeopardize the entire plan because he's kind of a bad actor. And the reveal with Ginjo actually being evil is kind of played to the same degree as when Aizen does his betrayal. Narratively, they're very similar in that aspect, and then while Ginjo doesn't have like a super OP ability, I think using him as a catalyst, and really this video of Ginjo versus Aizen in general is really just a catalyst for me to talk about the Fullbring arc and its scaling, because I really do feel like this is one of the most downplayed arcs in the series because it's one of the most unpopular arcs in the series. Like, for the most part, people do not like the Fullbring arc. It's very slow. We just come off the tails of Don Guy versus Aizen, a very hype moment, a moment that really could have ended off the series. The end of the Deicide arc really does feel like the end of the series, right? Everything is wrapped up very, very nicely, and then at the very end of Deicide, it's like, bam, Fullbring arc, next chapter, you know, we're gonna get right back into the swing of things here. So you kind of had this really nice ending for Bleach, and then it's like, oh, we're actually starting all over again, and we're gonna like get Ichigo all of his powers back in the same vein. And then there seems to be a lot of wasted potential. Like, people get really mad that it looked like Chad was gonna be focused on, and Uryu gets taken out for like the entire arc at the very beginning. Orihime's kind of there and kind of gets a little bit of character thrown at her because she's kind of there for like most of Ichigo's training, but for the most part it's not seen as a very good arc. But we can't let our personal opinions of the arc affect how powerful the characters are actually supposed to be. So using this Ginjo versus Aizen video as a catalyst for talking about the Fullbring arc, we're going to talk about what would happen if Ginjo popped into Fake Karakura Town and fought base Aizen. Now, I don't know exactly how this would work, but we're going to basically split the fights up into base Ginjo and Ginjo with Ichigo's acquired powers, right? I don't know how you would fit that into the scenario. Like, maybe Ichigo's just sitting around in the battlefield, happens to have a completed Fullbring, and if he happens to lose to Aizen in round one, we'll just say that Ginjo walks over and like stabs Ichigo in the chest and steals his powers. But I know this is going to be a pretty controversial topic because, you know, again, we're talking about Fullbring, and we're talking about Ginjo, and we're talking about him fighting Aizen, who's, you know, no slouch. He's a very popular, powerful character. So if you have any contentions with this video, or there's a point in the video where you don't think you agree with what I'm saying, or maybe you're just kind of questioning how I came to like a conclusion, like you don't necessarily disagree, but you do have questions, my Discord is in the description, and I'm more than willing to talk to anybody that has any issues with this video. Whether you want to debate on the topic or you just have a few questions, I'll, you know, help everybody out come to the same conclusion that I'm at, right? We'll all, you know, sing Kumbaya in VC and get along, unless you come in there swinging. If you come into VC swinging, I'm gonna swing right back. Like, that should be expected. But I'm very civil, I'm very understanding, you know, as long as you come in there nice, calm, respectful, I'll be pretty respectful to you. I mean, if you say something stupid, I might call you stupid. Like, let's just get that right out there and let's understand. But with all that being said, and I think all the groundwork and rules and stuff for this video being established, let's go ahead and get into this, and let's talk about how strong Ginjo's opponent is, Aizen, as a small refresher. So let's not misunderstand here. Aizen is no slouch. He's no weak opponent for Ginjo to be going up against. Even without all the crazy transformations and him being a transcendent being that's stronger than all hollows and all Shinigami, he's still stronger than all of the Espada combined. Mind you that most of the Espada on their own are able to take on one, if not numerous captains at one time by themselves pretty casually. And Aizen not only just says that he's stronger than all of them combined, but he actually backs it up by taking on, like, you know, just just a little bit, like just like 20 captain class fighters, you know, not a big deal or anything like that, and he kind of cuts through them pretty casually. There's really only 4 people in Fate Karakura Town that were like any semblance of a threat to Aizen. 2 of them being Shinji and Shunsui, who caught Aizen off guard, so do we really count that? Like, Shinji got bopped like 2 seconds after Aizen figured out what his ability was, but Shunsui does have that infamous interview where Kubo said that Shunsui with his Bankai might have been able to take out Aizen, although those interviews, one, there's a lot of weird translations, and fighting a really good version of that interview that's like properly translated is very difficult to do, and most of the translations we do have of that interview do seem to have the interviews asking Kubo these like loaded questions where his only answer would be to say that yes, Shunsui is this powerful, when in all reality Kubo is trying to keep the Bankai under wraps and try to keep it a secret. So I'm not saying you can't use that to back up why Shinsui's this strong. In fact, Aizen even seems a little upset when Shunsui backstabs him, and he doesn't react to like any of the other captains, but when Shunsui stabs him in the back, he's like, yo, Kyoraku, you bastard, how could you do this to me? But aside from them, then it's just like Ichigo and Yamamoto. Ichigo, he was like, alright, come on Ichigo, you might have a chance to kill me if you holify and you catch me off guard. But when Aizen's on guard and, you know, Ichigo does that move where he splits Aizen in the building in half, after regenerating, Aizen's like, look dude, that was your last chance to kill me, because now I'm on guard, I'm focused on the fight, and you're not gonna get a chance like that ever again. So in Ichigo's case, it's kind of like, yeah, Ichigo's in the same like weight class generally, like he can damage Aizen, but there's no way Ichigo's actually going to beat him in a fight. Remember, this guy Aizen has mastered like every form of Shinigami combat, you know, Kido, Zanjutsu, all that stuff. He's a very, very good fighter. He's very skilled as well, on top of all of his strength. Then there's Yamamoto, who Aizen does concede that Yamamoto probably would beat him if they were to just slug it out. Now that doesn't just mean that Aizen's gonna get like one shot by Yamamoto or something. It's not like they're not in the same ballpark. Clearly Aizen was able to damage Yamamoto when he stabs him in the gut, but they do both plan against one another. Aizen plans by creating Wonder Wise to seal away Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, because he's like, look, if we slug it out, you might win, so let me just take this precaution against your Zanpakuto. Whereas Yamamoto, his plan can generally be seen as him trying to prepare for Kyoka Suigetsu, because he's basically doing a giant AoE nuke that kills everybody in the area just to make sure that he actually kills Aizen. Even though Yamamoto himself has kind of figured out Aizen's ability, he's like, look, if you stab me, I can feel your spiritual pressure, so I know that you're right here. So I basically caught you, but that just ties into his plan of ensuring Aizen dies by just nuking the area. One, that shows how dangerous Aizen is in Yamamoto's eyes, that he needs to prep this technique to like obliterate Aizen and make sure he does not come back. You don't just prep a technique like that for some guy that's a random schmuck. You know, if Aizen is severely weaker than Yamamoto, then who cares if you take a few hits here and there? You'll take the guy out. No need to sacrifice everybody in the Gote 13 or, you know, most of your captains. I get that like some people are in Hueco Mundo, but you're basically sacking most of the Gote 13 along with yourself potentially, because who knows if Yamamoto was confident that he'd be able to tank the technique himself. Obviously later on we see that he can, but you're gonna sacrifice all that just to make sure this one person dies. So it's a bit more even than people give it credit for. Let's understand that as well for Aizen. But after that, it's pretty much just Aizen getting smacked around by Isshin for a few chapters, and then Kisuke comes in and blows him up, and that's really it for base Aizen. So a threat that's enough to take on numerous captains by himself, can take on all of the Espada by himself, even gives Yamamoto a good run for his money, and this is the guy we're going to be pitting up against Ginjo. So let's go ahead and get into some of the Fullbring Saga scaling. Now we get into the fun stuff. We get into the Fullbring arc scaling, and this really comes down to one major point of contention, and that point of contention is, how strong do you think Fullbring Ichigo is? Because Tsukushima says you've regained or are close to regaining the power you once lost. When Ichigo gets his Power Ranger suit, they say he's regained his power. Ginjo even says once you complete your Fullbring, it'll meld with your Shinigami abilities, and you'll have powers beyond a Soul Reaper. Then later on in the arc, when Ichigo regains his Shinigami powers, Ginjo's like, why is he so strong? This is not what we expected. I mean, Ginjo makes the direct comparison from Ichigo's air pressure from his sword to a Getsuga Tensho, so clearly he's like scaling what Ichigo's currently capable of to what they previously knew of Ichigo. And in that whole like dialogue scene, he's like, dude, did Ichigo get stronger because his Fullbring has now meshed with his Shinigami powers completely? And this is all fine and dandy and everything, but we still need to answer the question of how strong is Ichigo's Fullbring, and what are Ginjo and Tsukishima comparing Fullbring Ichigo to? Because depending on which Ichigo they're comparing and using as a measuring stick, that's going to drastically affect how strong Ginjo is, because obviously, while base Ginjo's not really on that Fullbring Shikai Ichigo level, once he starts using Ichigo's, quote-unquote acquired powers that he borrowed from Ichigo, he is able to match, and not only match Ichigo, he's able to slap him around a little bit. In fact, he even tells Uryu, he's like, look, you can try to shoot me in the back, but I'm telling Ichigo the information I want to tell him. He's like, I could easily bully the both of you right now. Then they both go Bankai, and while they're fighting pretty evenly at first, the fight slowly devolves into Ichigo's favor. It's a bit quicker in the manga, like it's literally just a few panels of them fighting, and then all of a sudden, oh, Ginjo's dead. But in the anime, they drag the fight out a little bit more to make it seem a bit more even. It's pretty weird though that like their bases, Ichigo is so much weaker, then they both go Bankai, and then they're even, and then Ginjo starts devolving, maybe because it's not his Bankai, maybe he just has really bad stamina. They don't really explain it in the Fullbring arc, they're just trying to wrap up Ginjo's story right then and there. But there is a theory, and I guess we'll address this first, that Ichigo is now as strong as Dangai Ichigo, and I'll try to break this theory down in a quick and concise manner, but you know how I do things, right? Like, so when Chad is talking about how Tsukishima helped them fight Aizen, he shows Tsukishima looking at 4th Fusion Aizen, but Chad and none of the other people were there when 4th Fusion Aizen was present. The only people there were Tatsuki, Afroman, Keigo, like some of Ichigo's other friends were there, but Chad wasn't there, and Orihime wasn't there, the ones kind of talking about how Tsukishima helped them fight Aizen. So, how would Tsukishima plant that memory of him fighting 4th Fusion Aizen into Chad's head if he didn't know who 4th Fusion Aizen was? So either A, 4th Fusion Aizen is like running around in Fate Karakura Town, right, when he's like bullying everybody, and Tsukishima and Ginjo pop their heads out and they're like, dude, what's going on out there? Oh, there's some pretty powerful dudes fighting over there. Ain't that interesting? So they either see it there, somehow they followed Aizen and Ichigo out to like the little boonies that they were fighting in at the end of their fight, and they saw them there, or it's just Kubo kind of throwing it in there to kind of make it convincing for us, the readers, but the characters themselves don't necessarily have this knowledge. But if it's true that Tsukishima has knowledge of 4th Fusion Aizen and Dangai Ichigo, and he's saying you're regaining the power you once had, then Fullbring Ichigo and Fullbring Shikai and Bankai Ichigo have very big potential for how strong they are. Now, I don't think this is what is being meant by you're regaining your powers. I do think in that moment Tsukishima is just talking more generally about his Shinigami abilities. The one that's a bit more contentious is actually Ginjo's statement, where he's saying once you get your completed Fullbring, you'll become stronger than you were as a Shinigami, basically. So then at that point, if they do have knowledge of Dangai Ichigo, that could be argued that Fullbring Ichigo is that strong, but with the whole 1,000-year Blood War narrative, and when he gets his true Shikai, and then Yuha's like, yes, now you have reclaimed the power you used to defeat Aizen. At that point, it's very, very blatant. It's like, you have now gotten this power back. Congratulations. It would be really weird of Yuha to say that if Ichigo already got that power back in the Fullbring arc. You know what I mean? Like, it just wouldn't make sense narratively. So then at that point, it's like, what Ichigo are Ginjo and Tsukishima talking about? Like, masked Ichigo? Because that's still not bad if his Fullbring is the equivalent of Striped Masked Ichigo with his Bankai, and then he adds that to his base Shikai, and then he goes Bankai on top of that. That's pretty good. That's a good deal stronger than the Striped Mask that's able to damage Aizen, and obviously Ginjo's relative to that. And this kind of gets into the end of the video here, because if the whole Dangai thing is what you want to argue, if you want to argue that Fullbring is this transcendent power, and then, I mean, if you want to start pulling from like Camp for Your Own World as well and be like, well, actually, Fullbring abilities also come from the Soul King, so these characters are like super stupid powerful. Actually, if this is the angle you want to go at, then Ginjo would slaughter Aizen. It wouldn't even be a competition, because then you're basically taking Dangai plus Fullbring, and that's like Ginjo basically, and pitting him up against base Aizen. Like, it just wouldn't even be remotely fair in any capacity. But then if we're talking about Striped Masked Ichigo, it gets a bit more fair, since Ginjo is somewhat relative to Fullbring Ichigo. In his base, he'd be able to put up somewhat of a decent fight against Aizen, seeing as, again, Ichigo was able to damage Aizen, but again, Aizen's just a better fighter than Ichigo is, basically, at the end of the day. So base Ginjo, I mean, might be able to scrap with Aizen for a bit, but I mean, we don't really have any like skill feats for Ginjo. We don't really know how good of a fighter he is, so he'd probably just get outplayed by Aizen. Ginjo wouldn't be able to like lean on just being like super powerful to compensate for his low skill. However, once we get to like Stolen Powers Ginjo, like Ginjo with Ichigo's Fullbring and Shinigami abilities, that gets really interesting, because at that point it's like, okay, Holofied Ichigo somewhere in the ballpark of base Aizen, but now we have Fullbring Ichigo equal to that Holofied Ichigo, plus Shikai, plus Bankai. Now, kinda hard to quantify how much stronger the Fullbring to Shikai jump is. We know that a Getsuga Tensho is basically just Ichigo swinging his sword at this point, so it's presumably much stronger at this point. But just to kind of illustrate the point, let's just say that there was no jump. Let's just say that it's like dead even, it's just 1-to-1. The Bankai would still be like a 10 times increase. So, at bare minimum, you have someone that's like 10 times stronger than Striped Masked Ichigo, who was already able to split Aizen open, and at the very least, Ginjo is going to be pushing Aizen around. He's going to be giving him a very hard time. Now, obviously there's other factors to consider. One, again, Aizen is a very skilled fighter. He has like every Kido under the sun available to him, and then he also has Kyoka Suigetsu, none of which Ginjo really has a counter for, unless he just runs up and grabs Aizen's sword from him and like bonks him on the head with it. That would be a win condition for Ginjo. But outside of that, he doesn't really have anything to beat Aizen. So then I guess you could just make it a debate of power versus skill, and then, I mean, obviously you could eventually have it regress down to Aizen still technically has the Hogyoku, and Ginjo doesn't have a way to permanently put Aizen down, so Aizen would basically always come out to being the winner of this fight. But like I said at the very beginning, that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is just to say that Ginjo being able to do this to Aizen in the first place shows how powerful he is and how much of a threat he actually was. And all of those statements about Ichigo regaining his powers and everything, I think speaks to the narrative and the direction of the Fullbring arc and where it was going, right? Like, this was supposed to replace Ichigo's powers, and you can tell that like this is the direction Kubo was going in. Then all the Bleach fans complained, and then we had to give him his Shinigami powers back, so now we like had to stack both of these powers on top of each other to make things make sense, and we just created this huge power clip. But Ginjo gets the profit off of that because he stole Ichigo's powers. But who knows, maybe Kubo planned this out from the start, and maybe we're all just big dummies. Like, maybe we think that the Bleach fans are the ones complaining, but Kubo actually was big braining everybody. Like, isn't that the whole meme? That it's like Aizen's pulling the strings of everybody in the Bleach cast, and then it like pans out and Kubo's pulling the strings over Aizen and everything. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. It'll kind of motivate me to do more Bleach content. If you want to see me do any debates or see any debates that I have uploaded about like Bleach, Naruto, other anime topics, I've uploaded those for members only. You don't need to do any of like the large, super maximum premium memberships. Like, literally the most basic thing will give you pretty much everything in the channel. So if you're interested in seeing those, I try to upload them like weekly, but I don't debate all that often. Like, I say not all that often. It's probably more than most people do, but some of them just aren't like good enough to upload, or it it's like very one-sided. Like if it's just me speaking the whole time, it's not like a back and forth or anything. I don't really want to upload that because I feel like it's bad. So I try to do it weekly, but getting a debate that's worth uploading is not the easiest thing to do. so I do try. But finally, join the Discord. I already gave my little talk on that at the very beginning of the video. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Drink your water. Go for a nice walk outside. The weather's nice. What's nice for me. And go see your family, man. It's Christmas time. Go give your father and mom a hug, man. Go tell them that you love them, man. It is Christmas vibe time, alright? Good vibes all around. Peace, late guys.